Let me ask you a question, and I want you to really think about it. Are you living a life that feels authentically yours? It's maybe one of the most important questions we can ever ask. And in this explainer, we're going to dig into what it really means to find that answer.
Plato was on to something thousands of years ago. This idea that looking inward, that self-reflection, isn't just some nice-to-have hobby. No, it's absolutely essential if you want a life that actually feels meaningful.
So, to get us started, I want to tell you a quick story. Picture this: a young doctor. From the outside, he's got it all figured out, a practice that's just booming, a ton of respect in his community. I mean, his path looks totally set.
He's basically achieved the American dream, right? No more scrounging for money, no more tiny apartments. He has a life that, by any measure you can think of, is a massive success. The kind of life society tells all of us we should be aiming for.
And this is the question that sits right at the very heart of his story. Because underneath all that success, all those accomplishments, there was this quiet, nagging feeling that something was deeply wrong. A huge disconnect between the life he was living and the person he felt he was on the inside.
And this is what that feeling sounded like when he finally said it out loud to his wife. This incredibly raw, honest confession that behind the mask of the successful doctor, he was just plain exhausted, completely uninspired, and felt like a total fraud in his own skin. And here's the twist. This isn't just some hypothetical story I'm telling you. This was the real, lived experience of the author, Philip McGraw. He was that doctor. And he spent a solid decade playing a role that wasn't really him before he finally realized something had to change.
So what is the source of a struggle like that? That deep feeling of being an imposter in your own life? Well, it turns out it comes from a conflict, a battle between two competing versions of yourself.
All right, let's break this down. On one side, you've got the authentic self. This is the real you, the genuine you, when you're not trying to impress anyone. This self is powered by passion and purpose, and it knows its own worth. Being this person feels like coming home. It's energizing. But then, on the other side, there's the fictional self. This is the role you play for the world, right? The version of you that is constantly worried about what other people think, desperate for their approval, and living as the fictional self, it's not just tiring. It is a constant, soul-draining performance. The author uses this perfect metaphor for this struggle. He says, trying to suppress your authentic self is like trying to hold a giant inflatable beach ball underwater. You can do it, sure, but it takes constant, exhausting pressure, and that ball is always fighting to pop right back up to the surface.
Now just think about that for a minute. What's the real cost of that fight? Of constantly pushing down who you really are? The amount of energy it takes is just immense. And it perfectly explains why a life that looks so good on the outside can feel so profoundly empty on the inside.
So, how does this even happen? I mean, how do we end up creating and living as this fictional self to begin with? According to the source material, it's basically a two-step process. Okay, so first, we all go through what are called defining moments. These are these really intense life events, could be good, could be bad, that fundamentally shape how we see ourselves and the world. But the event itself, that's only half the story. The part that's truly crucial is our internal reaction to it. It's the beliefs we form and the narratives we create about ourselves because of that moment. That's the part that really sticks.
Take a second and think about your own life. Can you think of any moments, maybe from when you were a kid, maybe from last year, that just completely redefined how you saw yourself?
The author shares this absolutely terrifying example from his own childhood. A teacher, furious over some classroom antics, just lost it. He physically picked him up over his head and threatened him. It was a moment of absolute terror and powerlessness that was just seared into his memory forever. And that just perfectly illustrates the power of these moments, doesn't it? That whole incident with the teacher probably lasted 5 minutes max. But out of the tens of thousands of days in a person's life, it's moments exactly like that one that stick with us. They become the foundation for the stories we tell ourselves for years, sometimes even decades.
Okay, so if our fictional selves are built on these powerful moments and how we react to them, then how in the world do we find our way back? How do we start rewriting that life script?
And here's the crucial thing to remember. While you can't change the past, you have total control over your internal reaction to it today. The power isn't in trying to erase history. It's in auditing the beliefs you formed because of it. And here is a fantastic tool for that audit. When you uncover a core belief that you think might be part of your fictional self, run it through these 4 questions. Number 1, is this belief rational? I mean, is it actually true, or is it just something you've told yourself for so long you started to believe it? 2, is it productive? Does it help you solve problems and move your life forward, or does it just keep you stuck? 3, does it protect my health? And we're talking about everything here: mental, emotional, physical. Is this belief a source of strength or a source of stress? And finally, the bottom line, does this belief actually get me what I want, need, and deserve? Does it serve your authentic self or your fictional one? This framework is your filter for sorting out the junk from the programming that really helps you.
And let's be absolutely clear here. This process is not about finding someone to blame for those defining moments. It's about empowerment. It's about recognizing that the problem isn't the event itself, but the internal programming you've been running ever since. And you are the only one with the power to change that programming.
So as we wrap things up here, the focus shifts entirely to you and your future. What does your next chapter look like?
The very first step is always the hardest, but it's also the most important one. You've got to be radically honest with yourself. You have to be willing to acknowledge the parts of your life that aren't working, the ways you might be living as a fictional self, because acknowledgement is the key that unlocks any possibility for change.
You know that feeling of being tired, of feeling like a fraud, of not waking up inspired? That isn't a sign that you're failing. It's a signal. It's your authentic self trying to get your attention, telling you it's time to stop holding that beach ball underwater. And that really brings us to the final, powerful question. This isn't practice. This is the real deal. You only get one shot at this life. So knowing what you now know about the authentic self and the fictional self, what are you going to do with it?